Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. Hey, in crazy times like this, I wanted to just remind you that God is faithful. He loves us and He's for us. And I wanted to share a little bit of a message that I've been sharing with my friends and family and people at the bridge. And I hope it's encouraging to you. One of my favorite hymns, if you like music, is Great is Thy Faithfulness. And the song is so terrific. It was written by a guy named Thomas Chisholm back in 1923. And this guy, he was born in a log cabin and raised in a little country schoolhouse and didn't have any seminary training or any college for that matter, but came to Christ at age 27 and later at age 36 actually became a minister for God. And then of all things, he got really, really, really sick. So he was so ill, he couldn't really even minister to people. So he gave a lot of his life to writing poetry and getting through tough times. Later in 1923, he wrote a poem based on Lamentations, where he talked about great is thy faithfulness, that God was so faithful, even in the midst of his own personal illness, his own chaos, his own catastrophe, his own difficulty in life. He had a friend, William Runyon, in 1951. He shared his poem with William. William actually was an organist, played music, was handy at writing music. So he put Thomas's lyrics and his poem to music. And of all things, Runyon knew a guy named George Shea, who was a great singer. Shea sang the song, and that was really cool. And he knew Dr. Houghton, who was the head of Moody Bible Institute at the time. And then Billy Graham, who was a student at Wheaton, heard Shea sing it and really loved it. So there was a connection there. And then Billy Graham ended up using Shea singing Great is Thy Faithfulness in his crusades, if you remember back in the 1950s or so. And make a long story short, it became a very popular song. You might know the lyrics. They go like this: Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning from thee. Thou changest not. Thy compassions, they fail not. Thou hast been. Thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. And that all that I've needed, thy hand has provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. In times like this that are difficult, I hope you know that God knows what you need, and all that we needed, He's ready to provide. And I and others, of course, are ready too. So keep us posted how we can be helpful. But God is faithful in the midst of really difficult times. And that's why this song has been so significant. You know, in 35 years of ministry, I've never really taught from the book of Lamentations. But today I wanted to just take a passage from Lamentations chapter 3. I probably avoided the book because to lament, the title of the book, means to grieve, to cry, it means to be overwhelmed, to like be in a tough time. And so I'm like, why would anyone want to be in Lamentations? You know, that's kind of a tough book. It's about the people of God who were lamenting because they had been backsliding and they were in bondage, and the Babylonians had just taken the nation of Israel captive, which was catastrophic. I mean, this was the Pearl Harbor of their day. They were attacked and overtaken, to their surprise. And it was kind of the 9/11, if you will. It was the big crisis of the nation. And Jeremiah, as you know, who wrote Lamentations, is known as the weeping prophet. No one wants to be the weeping prophet. That means he just cried a lot. He was heartbroken a lot. He saw the people that he led, rejecting God. And so he laments. Now, when he writes Lamentations, it's 5 chapters long, but each chapter is basically like a funeral dirge. Each chapter is kind of about the grief of losing their identity, losing their city. They lost their temple. They lost kind of their place among the nations. They were embarrassed. They were ashamed. They were humiliated. They were hurting. They were pretty sad. Now, each of the chapters, interestingly, in chapter 1, it has 22 verses because there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And the first starts with like A, and the next stanza starts with B, and then C and D. So it's like A to Z. So it's really poetically laid out in chapters 1 and 2 and 4 and 5. 22 verses, 22 verses, 22 verses, 22 verses. But in the very middle of the 5 chapters, in chapter 3, God gives Jeremiah a nugget to give to us in the midst of all the craziness. In fact, in chapter 3, it's not 22 verses, it's 66 verses, 22, 22, and 22. And in the middle of the middle 22 verses, in the middle of chapter 3, in the middle of the 5 chapters of Lamentations, God sneaks in this little pearl, this morsel, if you will, this goodness about in the midst of all the grief, all the fears, all the anxiety, whether it's the corona days or the days of something difficult you're going through. God sneaks in the middle of that he is indeed faithful and that he's loving and that he cares. And so I wanted to share that with you. You know, when you read the book of Lamentations, if you start in chapter 1, here's what the Septuagint, the Jewish introductory words to Lamentations say. It says, "And it came to pass after Israel was led into captivity," they were taken over, "that Jeremiah sat weeping and lamenting, and lamented this lamentation over Jerusalem." So the prequel to reading Lamentations that's given to us historically is that this is what Jeremiah said when he was lamenting, grieving, and weeping. And if you read chapter 1, verse 1, it says this, "Oh, oh, oh, how deserted lies the city once so full of people. How like a widow is she who once was great among the nations. She who is queen among the provinces has now become a slave." Yuck. It begins with how deserted, how empty, how solitary, how lonely is the city of Jerusalem that once was so full, so teeming with people. It was bustling. In these corona days, it's interesting. You can drive by a local mall. It's like there's 4 cars there. It's like, where is everyone? Well, they're quarantined and they're staying at home like we've been told to do. And the streets are just kind of barren. And it says that the people of God, the nation of Israel, was like a widow. Widows are broken. Widows are heartbroken. They've lost their husband. And she's like a widow among the nations. She used to be great among the nations. And now Jerusalem's in forced labor. They're vassals. They're slaves. They've been taken captive. So you can see why I've never taught from this book. It's like such a downer. Darn. It's tough. It's hard. But I want to take you to Lamentations chapter 3, starting in verse 22. Remember, as I said, even though this book is 5 chapters of difficult, in the middle of chapter 3, in the middle of those verses, Jeremiah gives us something really cool. And he says this, and of course the song Great Is Thy Faithfulness is based on this passage here. Verse 22 says this. It's the very core, the epicenter of the whole book. "Because of the Lord's great love," that means his loyal love, his faithful love, he says, "we are not consumed." We are not, in other words, spent or used up. In other words, because of God's affectionate kindness, we're not completely destroyed. His love is not drained or depleted. He's not exhausted or spent. And neither are we, because his compassions never fail. God's love, his benevolence, his blessings, his goodwill, his grace, his clemency, his forgiveness, if you will, generosity, his sympathy towards us when we're struggling and having a hard time. It never fails. It never stops. It never ends. It never flounders, flops, or fizzles. It never falls short. His compassion never hits bottom. He never runs aground. God never runs out of being faithful to us, loving us, and caring for us, particularly when we're having such a hard time. In verse 23, he picks up. He says this compassionate love God has, it's new every morning. It's new every morning. His loving kindness is fresh every day. His affection is created anew today. We're not talking about relying on God's love yesterday, or how much he loved you when you're at camp, when you're in high school and you came to Christ, or his love for you when you're in your highest season. His love for you is fresh and new today. That, I think, is legit. Great is your faithfulness. Abundant, in other words, is God's attachment and devotion and allegiance and constant care and loyalty to us. And then it goes on to verse 24. Jeremiah says, I say to myself, he's making it personal, the Lord's my portion. The Lord is my lot. In other words, the Lord is my inheritance. The Lord is what I'm putting my chips on. The Lord is who I'm banking on. The Lord is who I'm trusting in, and not in my anxieties, my concerns, and my fears. If God is for me, who could be against me? I'm going to wait on the Lord. See, it says, I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore, I will wait for you, God. I will wait for you. I'm sticking with you. I'm putting my confidence in you. I will gladly pause and wait. I'll put my life on hold. I'll wait expectantly and earnestly and eagerly for you to show up. And I'll be ready because I know you will. You're going to come for me. You will deliver me. The prophet really intimates here that we can count on God. And when we do, our faith will overcome our fear. Faith will be preeminent when we wait and go, I'm trusting him. I'm not going to give in to my fear, my neurotic tendencies, my compulsiveness, my anxieties, my worries. I'm not going to flag or falter. I'm going to trust in God, and I'm going to wait. I'm not going to go to my idols because a lot of those are not available. Whether you were like waiting for an NBA game, or for us who like basketball, NCAA March Madness, gone. You can't count on that. The gyms are closed. You can't count on working out. The malls are closed. You can't go buy something to make yourself feel good. You can't go to movie theaters and anesthetize with entertainment and shows and playing miniature golf or bowling or whatever. Everything that might have been an idol that you counted on to make yourself feel good or to help you get through tough times, Jeremiah says, no, you're my portion. I'm trusting you. I'm going to wait on you. And maybe this is a great reset for all of us. These are unique times where we can kind of go, wait, maybe I need to trust God. In verse 25, Jeremiah continues, and he seems to be implying if any of us have been flagging in our faith, or you haven't been as loyal to God, or you haven't opened the Bible in a while, or had a quiet time, or connected, or even prayed to him, he seems to be implying, do it now. He says in verse 25, the Lord is good. The Lord is patient. He's good. He's morally right. He's caring. He's benevolent. He's a father who digs you. He's bountiful. He's generous, right? The Lord is good to those who hope in him. So if you've been flagging in your hope in him, put it in him now. Trust him now. Believe him now. Get all in with him now. You can see, you can't count on the markets right now. You can't count on stocks. You can't count on your job, your employment. You can't count on your neighbors who you're supposed to be quarantined from. You can't count on the school system because they're closed. You can't count on hardly anything, but you can count on him. The Lord is good to those who hope in him and to the one who seeks him. So don't be passive. Be aggressive. Be assertive. Be proactive in pursuing him, investigating him, following him. The Lord delivers to those who chase him down, who say, I'm going to beat the bushes till I find God. I'm going to look high and low till I find God. I'm going to track him down because I'm desperate and doomed without God. I have to have God. And the Lord is good to those who hope in him and to those who seek him. And then finally in verse 26, this passage ends, it is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It's good. It's noble. It's fitting, if you will, to rev down, to halt and hold for a minute. To quietly means discreetly, silently, calmly, inaudibly wait for God to deliver us, God to help us, God to come through. without a whisper, without a murmur, without the media, without all the propaganda, without all the doom and gloomers in times like this. Who needs them? Without all the end timers, these people are coming out of the woodwork. We've been in the end times since Christ rose from the dead and defeated death. But they want you to think like it's all coming to a close. The scare tactics. It's time to shut that down. Your neighbor's conspiracy theories. Even in your own heart, it's good to wait quietly, to quiet the protest, to quiet the why me? Why me? To quiet all the complaining and the grumbling. Silence is a way to resign to the will of God. It's good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Let him rescue us. Let him help our hearts. Let him be our safekeeping and our victory. Let's not use this as a time to doubt him or to give in. Look, misery is necessary. Danger is essential. Difficulties are part of the plan. If life was easy schmeezy, we wouldn't have to trust him. We wouldn't have to rely on him. We wouldn't have to seek him. We wouldn't need him. We wouldn't long for eternal life. This world is broken. This is a great time to trust him. So there's a little bit of a message for you today. That's a little bit what I got in my quiet time. The Lord very much encouraged me. I was lamenting, so I went to Lamentations, and I'm like, I don't even like this book because it's so down. It's so difficult. It's dreary. It's blue. But in the midst of it, right in the middle, a morsel. And as I said to you at the very beginning, it was Thomas who got a vision back in the early 1920s. When he read this passage in Lamentations, he created a poem. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning from thee. Thou changest not thy compassions. They fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. And all I've needed, your hand has provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. He's faithful. Let's trust him. Love you. Stay in touch. We'll get through this together. God is good. Wait for him. He's going to show up. Blessings.